don't need to hear myself twice. Once is enough. What I wanted to do today, this is the first roundtable of this year. So I think I used to do them by every other week, and then I used to do them monthly, and then we did them quarterly last year. Quarterly just wasn't enough. There was too much time between calls, and a lot of people said that they wanted to have more interactions. Typically with these roundtables, it's open to everybody internationally. There's no charge. You can join them. It's totally free for all. And in a lot of these roundtables, the way I run them is that get on a call and let's just shoot the shit. Not today, but don't get too excited because I'm not going to do this every time. This is a fucking 30-minute slide or 35-slide presentation that I'm not going to do for every single call because I don't have that amount of time. But for this call, for the first roundtable of 2023, what I wanted to talk about was recession proofing. That's definitely a topic that's come up with a lot of agencies that I've been speaking to. A lot of agents are asking me what they need to be doing to kind of get ahead of a potential recession. So whether some people say that a recession is coming or we're in a recession or it's not going to happen, it doesn't matter because this is just the best practice in an agency of certain metrics you need to be tracking, certain decisions that you might need to make, and just basically having a mindset that you're running a business based on numbers and bottom line, and you're staying on top of that and being able to react if the sales pipeline drops off or people are not performing. So what I'm going to do is I'll do a wee screen share. I'm going to try and fly through this presentation because I'm sure nobody wants to listen to me talk for an hour, or I'm sure maybe there is some people who wouldn't mind having a good laugh. But I'm going to fly through this presentation so it gives time at the end then to share. So we have more of a these presentations that I do is more of the stuff that I do with a private mastermind that I run, where it's more of like a teaching and coaching type thing where I share my insights and metrics and data and recommendations, and then give you guys an opportunity to then share. So let's see if I've done the right thing. Okay, look at this. This is exceptionally, phenomenally professional. It makes me even look like I'm mature. At 35 years of age, it's not going to happen. We'll just put one of those in there for good measure. Okay, so bit of a background for me who don't know. I've been an e-commerce agency coach for the last 5 years or so. Previously, before that, I was COO of a Shopify Plus agency. I think I've worked with 140 agencies now at this stage. I'm not exactly sure of the numbers because I haven't really counted it since 6 months ago, so I'm not really sure what the numbers are. I've spoken to well over 1,000 agencies. And it's the same problems over and over again, same but different. There's different shapes and sizes, but it's just like people. We all different colors, different shapes, different sizes, but it's the same bullshit. We all eat the same, bleed the same, shit the same, cry the same. It's all the same stuff. So today, what I'm going to do is, if you have specific questions when I'm going through this presentation, just put them in the chat. I have actually had some people submit questions to me beforehand, so it allowed me to kind of build the presentation off the questions that people have. But if you have anything specific, just throw it in the chat and then I'll get to it or build it in, or maybe it's already in there. So a couple of things that I wanted to touch on first. How do you know whether your agency is potentially at risk? And for me, the three clear things that I would say, the obvious one is going to be cash flow. That's the obvious thing. If you don't have cash flow in your business, then you're always at risk. I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later down, just to give you a bit of insight of what I recommend an agency should have in terms of cash flow. But three very tactical things that I would determine an agency being at risk. Number one, no clear roadmap or strategy. If the economy takes a downturn, do you have some kind of plan in place if there's an emergency? Now, that plan could be something documented. Now, emergency can be lots of different things. You could get sick, you could die, God forbid. You could have a family member that you need to take care of. There's lots of different emergencies that an agency would have. And a recession is just one of those, but having some sort of contingency or strategy in place. Number two, not having your systems and processes documented and delegated. If an agency, if the economy takes a downturn, not having efficient systems is one of those things that you're going to feel really hard. And then the final one is decision-making in times of chaos. I don't want to go too much into the medical side of it, but when you're in a time of chaos, cortisol, stress hormone, is rushing through your body, and scientifically, you are categorically significantly worse at making decisions when you're fueled by cortisol than when you're in I don't know, not sane is not the right word because I'm definitely not sane, but in a level state of mind. So those are three things that I would be looking at: having a roadmap, having your systems and processes, and having a clear framework of how you make decisions when the shit hits the fan, whether that's people that you reach out to, whether it means going through something more logical so you don't allow emotions to kick in or fear. So the next thing I wanted to tackle, what I've done is I've broken these out into three key areas. But first thing I want to tackle is just the common mistakes that I've seen agencies make. When COVID hit in 2020, the markets or agencies took a massive hit because brands just pulled back and didn't want to do anything for the first while. And then it was like a springboard into explosive growth. And then the market last year kind of dried up a little bit, not for every single agency and every single market, but certainly for the bigger agencies, they felt a big hit last year. So some of the common mistakes that I see agencies make is just a really poor insight into cash flow and capacity. So those two things are separate, but they do impact each other pretty significantly. So not knowing what your cash flow state looks like and not knowing what your capacity is like, either too much capacity or not enough. So you've got too much resource available, or your team is completely max capacity and you're selling because you're nervous, and then you have to then hire really expensive people. Another one as well is just having little to no awareness of your profit margins. The amount of business owners that I speak that just don't have a fucking clue about their numbers. They just don't know, what are my profit margins? Because for me, I know that if the industry is going towards a recession, I want to know where my biggest profit margins are. So it means that I can push sales on products that are going to make me the most profit. I'm not going to work hard to get unprofitable or break even projects over the line. You know, when COVID hit in 2020, a lot of the agencies I was speaking to, they're like, yeah, we're just cutting our costs and we're doing stuff for free and we're just doing it break even just to get money in. And I'm just like, okay, that's a terrible strategy, because that's how agencies crash and burn, because that will catch up with you. So that takes me on to the next point: too quick to discount pricing. I am not a fan of discounting pricing whatsoever, and that's often something that agencies jump to really quickly. A race to the bottom of the barrel is not the way to run an efficient business. I think that what you should be doing is prioritizing payment terms, so more favorable payment terms, versus giving people a discount, or adding more perceived value to the same proposal rather than discounting the price down. Discounting is something, or cutting costs is something that is absolutely last resort. It's battle stations and it's do or die, and that's what you have to do. But it is a very temporary measure, because people always remember that. They call it like a pricing anchor. People always remember that lower price. And when they have that pricing anchor that's super low, it's really difficult to get them back up again. The reality of the situation is your costs don't change. Your employees aren't suddenly going to take a discount in their salary or their contractor fees. So you can't then cut costs on the client side if you're not able to cut costs on the agency side. And then the two final things, which kind of go hand in hand, is waiting too long to make cost-saving decisions and laying off team members in different stages. It is absolutely catastrophic, because if you take too long to make cost-saving decisions, it means that you then have to come in with a hammer, or an iron hammer, than just making some small fine cuts. And laying off team members across a period of time. If you know you need to make layoffs, the best thing you can do is just look at all of the people, figure out the people that are not performing, or the first ones that need to go, and make that decision in one fell swoop, so it means the team can recover. Once you start chipping away and chipping away and chipping away, the remaining people you have in your team that are your A players, they're going to leave, because they're not going to have any sense of safety. So a couple of action points that I would say, and this is all, these slides that I'm going to go through, or these recommendations are, you should know all this stuff. So I'm just going to put it in here, and then the following slides, then I want to break it down into 3 specific areas. So first things first, obviously, know your cash flow. You need to know what your project cash flow looks like based on book workload. So it means that you can stay on top of your accounts receivable. So it's not just knowing what your profit margins, or not just knowing your capacity, but have a look at what you've got invoiced, and have a look at what's outstanding in invoices. I spoke to an agency earlier today, and they're scrambling to get new business in because it's been quiet for a few months, but they have a couple of months worth of payroll sitting in accounts receivable. They have invoices that are sitting outstanding for 2 or 3 months beyond the payment date, and that's impacting their ability to make better financial decisions and not bring on business because they have to. So if cash flow is an issue, you need to really, if you look at your bank account and you know that you've got less than 3 months in the account, you need to plan to cut costs, because those 3 months are not going to go far. Starting initially with non-essential expenses. So whether you have a coach and it's not essential to have that person, I said that to my agencies before, if you're having difficulty with finances, don't spend your money on me. You need to invest it in your team. On travel expenses, conferences, all of that stuff where you have expenses that they're not absolutely essential. And also, it's probably one of the worst things you'll ever have to do as a business owner, but look at your team and get a clear idea of who you might need to let go of, and start mentally preparing yourself for what that looks like. And the final thing as well that agencies or business often do too late is speak to the bank about a line of credit. Now, one tip or one recommendation that I would make to you: asking a bank for a line of credit when you need it is almost always the worst time to ask for a line of credit, because they have you over a barrel. So if things are fairly good right now and you're not having too many financial difficulties, and all of your payments are going out on time, and none of the checks are bouncing, and you have no credit issues, that is exactly the perfect time to ask for a line of credit, because a line of credit is like an umbrella. You'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So you wait for a time when your company is in a financially buoyant and stable position, then speak to your bank about being able to extend your line of credit. And it means that what you've done is you've proactively prepared ahead for a potential downturn. And I would say, if possible, aim for at least 3 months. So you have a line of credit that will cover you for 3 months. So if your monthly overheads are 100K, then try and get 300K out of the bank. If it's 50K, then 150. But the important thing there is you want to ask for it when you have money in the bank to prove that you can pay it back. Okay, so my favorite number is 3. So to make myself happy, I split it into 3 areas, and each area has 3 areas. Now, if I wanted to make myself really happy, I would split it down again to 3, because that's 3 threes, but I couldn't think of anything more, so I didn't. So first thing I'm going to talk about is leads, money, cash, dollar bills. That's what I'm going to talk about first, because when it comes to a downturn in the market, this is usually where we feel it the most. So I think I've shared this on a few different presentations before, and this is sort of like sales 101, but I just want to reiterate this point. 3 key sales channels in an agency: inbound, outbound, and partnerships. And the one that's super important to be mindful of is this bottom number here, the 20 to 25%, 3 to 5%, and 40 to 60%. The reason that's so important: when the economy starts to dip, everybody's just like, fucking hell, I'm going to send out 7 million cold outbound emails, and I'm just going to email everybody who's ever had a Shopify store in their life. Your close rates, or your success rate, is going to be 3 to 5%. It's probably going to be closer to 1 to 3% when it's totally cold and you've never done before. If you're really experienced, you can get 3 to 5%. I don't know why I would waste 3 months of testing this out when I know that my hit rate on partnerships is going to be closer to 50% on average. So it's important to be mindful that when things start to hit the fan, look at where you're going to have your biggest wins. If you know that you've got a much higher close rate with your partnerships, then I would probably double down on that effective immediately to start building some momentum. And then another one, this is kind of like feeding off the last one with the main lead channels. I don't really need to go into this in too much detail, because I feel like everybody knows inbound, outbound, and partnership. I grew up on a farm, so farming analogies, tickle my soul. So inbound is really like farming the leads. Outbound is really hunting like a shark, my spirit animal. Partnerships is like harvesting. You're reaping what you sow, like my beautiful fruit garden. And then marketing, really, which is absolutely top of the funnel, is like planting a seed. Now, when you look at that analogy, you have your planting at the top, or the very top of the funnel. I think they say the day you plant the seed is not the day you eat the fruit. So if you're having an economic downturn, planting seeds is not going to bring you immediate results. Planting seeds is something that you do when you don't have any problems and you think that there's an economic downturn coming in the next 3 to 6 months. You would start your planting and marketing now. So it means that in 3 to 6 months, you could start harvesting and start farming. Hunting is a totally different thing altogether, because it doesn't really matter what time it is. You can always go out and hunt. And then MRR. This one is just the agencies when the market took a dip, or the times, we're in the e-commerce industry, so it's kind of like up and down. I know that through COVID, it was like on a rocket ship, and now things seem to have leveled out a little bit, and people are shocked, and that's why everybody's laying off loads of people in tech companies. But the agencies had a significantly higher recurring revenue were the agencies that took less of a hit when the market slowed down. I cannot stress this enough. When I first started my business, I was known, maybe this is what I called myself, maybe this is what I referred to myself as every day, but I was known as the retainer queen. That's what I was called, the e-commerce agency retainer queen. And maybe one person called me that, and then I just decided that would be my new nickname, and I forced my husband to call me it. But building recurring revenue is absolutely, it is a lifesaver. And really what you should be aiming for is a 50-50 split between recurring and new business. For an agency, for me to consider an agency healthy, financially healthy and financially viable. And when I say an agency is healthy, it's an agency that I know that I could sell the agency. I'd be aiming towards 75%. It's much easier to hit that number when you're on marketing, performance marketing, and services that lend itself towards recurring revenue. It's a little bit more complicated to get 75% recurring when you have design and build or a dev agency. It's not impossible, because I have dev agencies that are 50 to 75% recurring. So don't put limitations on yourself, but that's really what you should be looking for. I'm glad I just saw a couple of love hearts there, so I just assume that everybody agrees that I'm a queen. So we're quickly moving on. When it comes to retainer investments, like I said, recurring revenue is absolutely mandatory. These are the statistics that you should be aiming towards. So when you're speaking to a prospect, whether it's outbound, inbound, partnerships, whatever it is, you would expect a brand to be spending 3 to 5% of their revenue towards maintaining their store and 5 to 8% growing their store. So if they're doing $100K a month, for example, 3 to 5% should be $3,000 to $5,000 would be spent on maintaining their store, and 5 to 8,000. But if a brand comes to me desperate for somebody to help and they're making 20K, I don't even know what 3% of that is, but it's not a lot. It's like $600 or something. $600 for me as a business is not enough money for me to keep the lights on. There's a way that you can figure out pretty quickly what your break-even sort of contract is. And for some of my agencies we know that anything below 3.5 a month, it's just not very profitable for us. It's too easy for us to overservice. So this is a metric or a benchmark that when you're going through the sales process or you're looking at prospects, just be mindful of what you expect them to be spending. Now, there are people that are going to be able to spend so much more, and some businesses that want to spend significantly less, but this is what you should aim for as a rule of thumb. And then the two other things which are so important to get ahead of in case the market tanks is your payment terms and accounts receivable. Now, those things tie hand in hand, because if your payment terms are, I'm going to bill you at the end of the month, and then you're going to get 60-day payment terms, that means you're waiting 3 months until you get paid. So whilst that might catch up on itself at some stage, if the market takes a downturn, then the people that are paying you are going to be delayed in your payments, but your payments still need to go out. You still need to pay for your team members. So my recommendation is always, where possible, have payment upfront at the start of the month, especially for recurring work or even a project work on a milestone basis. I always recommend agencies, you do 30, 50, 20. Some agencies prefer to split it out over the length of the project. So let's say it's a 4-month project, you're going to split the 100K, 25, 25, 25, 25. And then you bill the first amount totally upfront. The second amount is on design sign-off. The third amount then is on dev sign-off or dev kickoff in some cases. And then the final amount then is pre-launch. So you're never actually handing anything over to a client before they've paid everything up front. And then your final payment, whether that's a 20% or a 10%, whatever it is, that final payment then has all the additional out of scope items that the client has asked for and approved. And accounts receivable, if you as a business owner are not good at taking care of accounts receivable, delegate to somebody in your team or find a fractional CFO or an accountant. Accounts receivable, the amount of agencies I speak to that have a huge amount of cash just sitting there waiting to be paid. I spoke to an agency last year that almost went bankrupt because they had one massive client that was 70% of their revenue who hadn't paid them for 6 months, and it almost shut the business down. So that's a massive amount of money when you have over $500,000 outstanding from one client that you're still servicing and your team are still working on. And also you don't, because the team are taking up, the client is taking up 70% of your team, you can't exactly bring in a new client and pull them off that because it's such a big client and you want them to pay you. So you're in a pretty tricky position. And then another thing I wanted to mention as well, pretty straightforward, but it's amazing how many people just don't have visibility on this. If you want to know what metrics in your business, there's so many metrics in your business, a churn rate, client churn, time to close, close rate, all of this stuff. But core agency metrics that you need to stay on top of all of the time. You need to always know these numbers, whether you set yourself a weekly meeting where you run a report and make sure every single meeting on a Monday morning, every single week on a Monday morning, Friday afternoon, whatever, you have an up-to-date tally on your revenue, your overhead, and your profits, what your profits are looking like. Now, what I would recommend for agencies is, let's just say my revenue goal is to hit 5 million and I'm 2 months in and I'm at 250K. I know that I'm going to have a problem because I'm already at a fifth or sixth of the way into the year and I'm not even close to hitting the goal. I'm not on target. And then being mindful then of what the overheads are like, because it's really easy for overheads to run away from you. Maybe you've invested at the start of the year in a couple of technology upgrades or whatever it is, you paid out bonuses and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, we didn't make any money this month because I spunked all of this money on stuff that I said that I would hold off last year and pull the trigger this month. And the final one then is your profit margin. Now there's, some people focus on, net profit, gross profit, whatever. Just stay on top of your profit margin, like really knowing exactly how much profit you have in your business. And if your profit is going to drop, so just as a recommendation or a rule of thumb, an agency that is growing very quickly, an agency that's probably 15, 25 people, somewhere around that size, a healthy profit margin would be around 20%. If you're growing very quickly, I would be sort of comfortable as an ops person, if your profit dropped to around 10 or 15%, if you're growing very quickly. But generally speaking, a bigger agency, as in you're more than 10 or 15 people, you should aim for around 20%, sometimes 30%. If your agency is much smaller, your profit margin is likely going to be 30, 40%, especially if you're working with contractors. So it really depends on the size of your business and what the makeup is, but the benchmark is around 20-ish%. Much bigger agencies, if they can get somewhere around the 15% is fine. So here are a couple of tactical stuff. Like I said, if there's any specific questions, just throw them in the chat. I'm going to do my absolute best to get through this in 15, 20 minutes. I do have a cold, by the way. I don't usually sound this much of a horse. Well, maybe I do. I don't know, but I sound more horsey than usual. So I'm going to try and fly through this in the next 15, 20 minutes or so. Any questions, throw them in the chat. And then what we'll do is we'll have 15 or 20 minutes at the end to ask any questions, share any experiences. But first things first, as an agency, start looking at how you can diversify your sales channels. So many agencies that I speak to, they tell me that they get most of their business from word of mouth or referral. As far as I'm concerned, that is one lead channel. You may have multiple people that are referring you business and you may be getting, but none of that is reliable. You cannot rely on word of mouth or referrals as a lead source. So look to diversify. And then another thing I would say, if you're getting more than 20% of new clients from a single source, you're absolutely at risk. So you don't want to ever have that concentration at more than 20%. And the bottom line, when you're going through a recession, your reputation as being somebody who's trustworthy and reliable is what people are going to be looking for. So when the market tanks, people will jump ship and leave their agency because they are working with a team of people where things are a little bit uncertain. And ultimately what they're looking for is they're looking for a safe home. And the businesses, the brands that invested a lot of money, despite things being uncertain, they wanted to go to a home where it was a safe pair of hands. So that's something to be really mindful of. You need to make sure that thing that I said earlier about the planting the seed and harvesting the seed, case studies, that's the marketing piece with case studies. We are constantly communicating with people. We are safe, we're reliable, we know what we're talking about. So I would say review, I put down here as an action point, review new clients from the last 12 months to identify the lead source and identify possible lead channels. So just look at the pool of, or the clients that have either come your way or that you've worked with over the last year or so, and try and figure out where are most of those people coming from. Are they coming from a particular tech partner, a strategic agency? Are they coming from a platform, or maybe they're coming from a site like Clutch, a review site? Have a little look and try and see where there's commonalities between where the best clients are coming from and the best leads, and then double down on that. Okay, one of the things somebody actually reached out to me before and asked me, we're considering on pulling back on events. What are your thoughts on this? So if the market tanks, investing in events, is that still a good strategy? One thing I would say when it comes to an economic downturn, now I will just want to caveat this first by saying, if you don't have the cash to do it, don't live beyond your means. Don't stretch yourself thin financially trying to be someone that you're not. If the money is not there, you need to work with what you've got. But if you're in a position, don't pull back for the sake of pulling back. Because the people that I saw push through financial difficulties are the ones, or come out the other side stronger, are the ones that push through and continue to invest. So when the market is down, and I know this sounds horrible, my husband's an investor, so he knows this very well. When the markets are down, there's so much opportunity. There is absolutely so much money being spent. So I would say in a down market, now is the time to invest, because people are looking at a reliable source. They're looking for someone who has the confidence to say, I've got your back. I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to shut down for anyone. So I think it's absolutely probably more essential than ever to continue to invest and maintain your communication with your prospects, your network, whatever. And what I would do is I would encourage agencies to double down on their marketing efforts. One, again, to be very specific, double down on your marketing efforts, but be much more targeted and more curated. So I probably wouldn't recommend spunking $4,000 to go to Shop Talk in Vegas. That's going to end up I don't know what the tickets are for Shop Talk in Vegas, but I think it's thousands of dollars. But I probably wouldn't recommend spunking $4,000 and then $3,000 or $4,000 to actually go and stay at the hotel and, have the shenanigans in Vegas that come with those big conferences. What I would do instead is probably take $2,000 or $3,000 and I would do an event somewhere, or I'd go to Vegas and just wouldn't $4,000 on the ticket, and instead I'd do a happy hour somewhere and make sure that I curated a list of people that I wanted to invite. So you just have to be much more mindful and intentional with the initiatives that you're investing in. And then one really important one just to think about, and anybody needs any help with this with ICP, I've got lots of frameworks that I can send your way. When it comes to marketing, understanding who you're going after, most agencies don't have one specific ICP. However, I do know an agency that specializes exclusively in paint brands. I don't really understand why paint brands would be your thing, but whatever. But really defining who your ICP is. So whether that's a subscription business or a D2C fashion or health and beauty or whatever, a Shopify client, you're going to have horizontal and vertical profiles, and if you can try and hit them on the bullseye where it's a Shopify brand on subscription selling X product, your marketing efforts are going to be so much more effective. So if you're going to invest in marketing, know who the fuck you're targeting, because if you don't know who you're targeting, it's going to be a waste of money anyway. And then this is something that I heard actually pretty recently. I'm from Ireland, so we don't say niches, we say niches because we pronounce it properly. But Americans say it wrong. So the riches are in the niches, which should be niches, which is why I know this is a bullshit expression, but on paper it looks beautiful. But it is absolutely true. There is a lot of money in the niches. So if you take anything from today, that's how niches is pronounced. Don't forget about the recession stuff. That's how you properly pronounce niches. But there absolutely is a lot of money to be made in niching down. So another question I had is, how do partnerships fit into recession proofing? Should we focus on current partners or look for new ones? Well, I think I put a controversial post. I would say controversial because a few people reached out to me and said that they didn't really like it, but I feel like that means that I'm doing the right thing if people don't like it. Doubling down on core partners. My rule of thumb would be when there's an economic downturn, that's probably not the perfect time. Again, it's like asking the bank for an extension or a line of credit when you've got nothing in there. It's probably not the perfect time. Going to new partners and then asking them for referrals and leads, you're probably not going to be a very effective strategy. I speak to and work with a lot of tech partners. I have 10 strategic partners that I'm working closely with this year on a selection of different initiatives. And as part of my work with the partners, I do quarterly one-to-one strategy sessions to just help them be better partner managers and better nurture their agencies. And one of the things they complain to me about all the time is that as soon as an agency reaches out, they're like, where's the fucking business? You're a lead source, give me some leads. And the bottom line is a partnership is like in a bank. You need to make deposits before you can expect a withdrawal. So if I felt that the market was going to tank, I wouldn't be wasting too much of my energy reaching out to lots of new partners. I would probably double down on the ones that I already have an established relationship with and try and go deeper with those partners. So as an action point there, I would say pick out your core partners. You probably don't want to have any more than 3 to 5. If your agency is a bit bigger, then maybe 5 to 8, 5 to 10 would be fine. So the middle number there is roughly about 5. Regular check-in calls with them. Make sure that you're keeping them up to date on your relevant case studies. Something, I don't know how many times I have to say this to people, and every time I say it on a call, people are like, oh, that's a fantastic idea. I think I've said it about 1 million times. You need a fucking partner deck. You need a deck for your partners. So each of your partners it's like a sales deck for your agency, but for the partner, where they know who your mutual clients are. They know what mutual case studies you have. They know what your ICP looks like, and it can just be a 1 or 2 pager. But the agencies that I work with that have dedicated partner decks are the agencies that get more than 50% of their business from referral partners. Okay, swiftly moving on, we're at number 2. So now one was leads, second one is team. So I'm going to talk about team. So one of the biggest questions that I got asked by many people is, if I have to make cuts, where do I start? How do I do it? Unfortunately, I had a handful of agencies I worked with last year that had to go through and make a lot of cuts. So that was a difficult decision that agencies had to make. It was the right decision for their business, but it was very, very difficult. The reality is that layoffs or letting people go is unfortunately just part of the business. And as a business owner, you just need to suck it up and get on with it. It's much worse for them than it is for you. So don't be a pussy about it. Just fucking make the decision and communicate it in a way that's not disrespectful. Don't be disrespectful about it, because at the end of the day, it's their life, but it has to happen. And just in general, as a business owner, you know that expression, they say hire slow, fire fast. I guess that's kind of true. But once you know something isn't working out, you just need to pull the trigger pretty quickly. And when I say pull the trigger, because I've got Americans in the group, that does not give you permission to take them out the back and shoot them. I know that you guys love guns. When I say pull the trigger, I mean pull the trigger in making the decision, not an execution. And then another thing that's super important, Jason, I knew Jason would be very upset about that one. He wouldn't agree with my, pull the trigger means don't kill them. I know you're done with them, but maybe the world and God isn't. And then another thing I would say as well that business owners don't do very well is transparency with your team, but not oversharing. If you have people in your team that you're going to be letting go, what I would personally do is I would probably start putting the vibes out sooner rather than later, because I would rather somebody jump before they're pushed, because it's just easier for the business. It's easier for team morale. And the second point of that is reassuring the core people you have in your team that you intend to keep them on, and you're not making these decisions lightly, but you will, at all costs, you will be keeping them. The reason that's so important is I had agencies last year that were over transparent, and they shared all of their financial woes with all of the team members. And then they got rid of one person, and then a couple of weeks or months later, they got rid of another person. And then their 2-star players then just bailed within a month of that, because they're like, Jesus, we're all on the chopping block. And basically the agency went from 15, 18 people right down to about 8 or 9. And now he has to rebuild, and it's probably set him back about 18 months. So I'm an operations person. I've got a heart of stone. Data will tell you whether it's the right decision or not. It will help you decide. Numbers never lie. So as long as you're holding the team accountable and there is a clear metrics that you're expecting the team to deliver against, look at the numbers and let people go according to performance and according to the numbers. Ideally, somebody who's having performance-related issues or company culture or fit issues, it's an easy time to let people go and do a bit of a purge. Okay, I'm going to give myself 10 more minutes max. Setting team expectations. This one kind of runs off the last one, and it's definitely something that I see business owners fail at miserably, is just not setting expectations clearly with the team, especially in times of certainty. When the shit is hitting the fan and the team knows that there's too much capacity, the team will know that business is not dropping. So it's your responsibility as a leader in a company to communicate that with them and let them know, this is what's happening, this is what we're doing about it. This is potentially what the consequences will be, but as and when we get to that point, I will let you know. But for this period of time, this is what we're focused on. An expression we use in Ireland is we call people busy fools, where they're very busy being foolish, doing bullshit work. So instead of having people in your team who are busy fools, they're doing a lot of stuff. What you need to do is you need to sit down, especially with the core people in your team, and saying, right, it's going to be battle stations for a little while. Person A, this is my expectation of you. Person B, this is my expectation of you. And person C, this is my expectation of you. This is my end goal, and this is how you all play into it. I know you've got 1,000,001 other things to do, but if you don't each achieve these objectives, we are not going to get to the end goal, and we're not going to get to the other side. So just really taking the reins as a business owner is something that's absolutely necessary, because you can have a team of amazing people that all are doing what they think is best for the company, but the buck stops with you. So you need to assign or communicate exactly what you think is best for the company right now and make it really clear to the people in the team what you need. Okay, super quick question. I got this a couple of times, actually. We're moving some of our team to freelance. What are your thoughts on agencies and the freelance? Go for it. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. It doesn't really make a difference. The one thing that I would say, I would probably recommend that your client-facing team should be in-house because of company culture and, knowing more about the business. But it really depends on your agency and what kind of services you're producing. But typically, I would say client-facing people in-house, everybody who's on the production, implementation, execution, devs, designers, marketers, all of those people, freelance them, contract out. It doesn't make a difference. At the end of the day, if you can bring your profitability up by having outsourced talent that are doing a good job, I don't have an issue. Just have good contracts in place, because people are fucking sneaky bastards and will try and steal your clients. And then finally, when it comes to team, holding your team accountable. Communicating expectations is worthless if you don't actually hold the team accountable. So if I turn around and say, I expect this particular action item from you, for example, if I delegate to my head of delivery, I want you to document the delivery process from start to finish. And that's it. That's your goal. I need more clarity. You never check in with them. You never give them a timeline. You never give them any guidance. It just means that you have other people in your team that perhaps don't need to have their hand held and they're delivering stuff, and then other people in the team that are not delivering. And you're going to have people that are going to get pissed off with each other, especially in times of chaos and uncertainty. The last thing you want to have is mutiny in the ranks. And then finally, it's just a good trait in leadership. Accountability is something that will often separate the proverbial men from the boys, because, we're not all men here. Well, I'm just undecided at the moment, but I'm just joking. My husband's checked. I'm pretty sure I'm a woman. So accountability as a leader is a great way to boost the morale with your team. When you have somebody who comes in and puts their proverbial business balls on the table and saying, we've got a difficult time right now. This is the action plan. This is what we're going to do about it. This is what I expect from you, and you. The people in the team have a sense of confidence. For a lot of people, they don't really want to know the ins and outs of the plan. They just want to know that you have things handled as a business owner. So a super easy action plan here is, when you've set the expectations with your team, agree what the check-in looks like, document it, whether you're using like an Asana, Trello, Monday, ClickUp, whatever the tool is. Make sure it's all documented with the key people responsible and dates. That's the best way to hold people accountable. Here we go. There's a nice wee GIF. And then the final thing then, the last 3 items then, when it comes to the client portion, is some pretty easy ones I'm going to talk about, is your payment terms, your service offerings, and your client concentration. So payment terms, like I said a few times in this call, you need at least 3 months of expenses or overhead in the bank. So if your company, if it costs you 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 a month to pay all of your overheads, your goal should be 3x that in the bank. And if you don't have 3x that, then that's when you need to speak to your bank about getting a line of credit. Now, for an agency to be considered financially stable, I'd be looking at 6 to 12 months, and I'd be working towards that number as an operations person. And then when you have financially stable clients, so if we're going through an economic, just say with COVID hit, there was a lot of supply chain issues. Some industries or some client profiles got hit much harder than others. So people that were outsourcing, I had an agency that was working with a bleach, or not a bleach, like a cleaning product brand, but their supplier of the packaging for this, poison was coming from China. So they were expecting all of these bottles to come from China, and then obviously supply chain shit the bed and nothing was coming through. But they had other clients then where everything was crafted and built in America, and they didn't have the same issue or as much of an impact. So I would be auditing my clients and trying to figure out which ones will not be impacted by the market should it take a downturn, and then look at those clients and say, okay, well, maybe I can incentivize them to pay a bigger portion up front to offset the other clients in exchange for something else. I know I already said don't discount prices, but if somebody is going to pay me 12 months up front, I will happily give them a 5% discount because I know it's going to balance out the other stuff. And then on the flip side of that, I would also look at the clients that are bad payers or always have an excuse, always late payment. Because if they're late payment or have payment issues when things are normal, when the shit hits the fan, they are going to be your biggest headaches. So trying to get ahead of that as quickly as possible. Okay, I'm on the wrong screen. We've considered lowering rates temporarily. I think I may have covered this already. Would you recommend that? No, not really. I wouldn't recommend that unless it's absolute DEFCON 1 battle stations. I think lowering rates is, the bottom line is, as you grow as a business, you're moving up the food chain, and you want to be going from the bottom of the ocean where you're just like eating the shit that the fish shit out, to then moving up and being the shark. So when you're a shark or getting close to being a shark and then you drop your rates, you're basically feeding in the same pool where all the shit is, which means because you're much more experienced, you're going to do all of those other people out of the market because you have this much experience and you're charging the same rate as somebody who doesn't. And that's just a bullshit. That's just a bit of a dick move. So considering lowering your rates, absolute battle stations, very, very select, but it's making it absolutely clear. Like one of my agencies has done recently, you will never see this offer or opportunity from us again. We will never charge rates this low. If you want to jump on the bandwagon, now is the time to do it. After this, it is never going to happen again. But as a rule of thumb, I absolutely wouldn't recommend lowering rates. And if you're in that situation, you've got bigger problems. And the two final things then I want to talk about: client concentration and service offerings. Essential services usually have a bigger impact on the bottom line. So it's making sure that you're communicating your value to clients. When people are making cuts, if you're thinking about making cuts your side, you better be sure that the person on the other side is thinking about making cuts. But if they see you as a mandatory part of their process as opposed to a luxury, it's just like when the market shit the bed, I spoke to agencies and I said to them, look, if you're really nervous about recontracting me for 2023 because of the market, then don't do it. And it meant that there were a couple of casualties, but the reality is the few people that decided not to recontract me for the year ahead didn't see the value in the work that I provided or weren't able to implement my recommendations, and it was probably worth them not working with me. And the majority of the other people were like, no, you're not going anywhere. I will always make sure that I have money for you because you've helped us grow our business from this to this. So you're an important part of our business. And then finally, just evaluate your services and just try and figure out which of the services that you offer are nice to have versus essential. Design and build, for example, a lot of businesses will put rebuilds or redesigns on hold, but they'll ramp up their performance marketing or their PPC paid spend and just put the other stuff on hold. So just really look at your business and figure out, this is an essential service, this is a nice to have, I'm expecting an impact here, which means I need to ramp up here. And just have conversations with your clients and just make sure that people are comfortable and confident and you have a bit of an insight of where their heads are at. And then the final one then, Jesus, I'm almost on track. That's amazing. Is client concentration. I think I've used this metric already, but I just really want to hammer this home because so many agencies have this issue. If you have one client that is responsible for more than 20% of your business annually, you are at risk. So just have a look at those numbers and figure out. And the only way to offset that is just to add more smaller clients to offset the bigger one. And as well, focus on diversifying your revenue base by signing up new accounts or upselling your existing clients. Upselling existing clients, if they already know you and trust you, you're probably going to have more luck. So I would call that inside sales. So agency sales inside your agency with the clients you already have. An easy way to do that is just go through your book of clients and just audit them and have a look and see, do I have one or two clients I'm super reliant on for revenue? And like I said before, I think in the last slide, if you have any clients that religiously have payment delays or you have to chase them up for invoices on a regular basis, they're the ones that if the shit hits the fan, I'm going to have problems with those. So what I would probably do is set up an automated accounts receivable process, or make sure that I have a credit card on file that I can do automated billing, or whether you do that through the bank or with a credit card, just so you can get ahead of it. So that's really the end of the presentation. There's a few agencies in the group here. I'm going to throw it over to everybody now because I saw that there was a load of comments came through, but I just wanted to get through this presentation. The slides will be available. Anybody wants them, just reach out to me, or maybe I'll email them round after, and then I'll upload the recording in YouTube, I think is what Seb does. Just as an FYI, if you haven't received 9,007,552 emails about this already, you must have put me in the spam folder. And if you have, shame on you, because if I'm dead to you, then you're dead to me, and go fuck yourself. But I run an Avengers group for e-commerce agencies. It's the only group that's exclusive to e-commerce. This is roughly what it looks like. And we cover specific topics like this. There's a few agencies in this group now who were just on the leadership call with Catherine, where they talked about empathy as a leader. My challenge with most of the agencies I work with is that they're empathetic to a fault, and then employees have them twisted around their finger. And actually, we're heading off. You might have seen on LinkedIn, we're actually heading off to Mexico at the end of March. There's a group of us going over to Mexico to do some. Jason is one of them. I think Jason's probably going to bring a gun. I'm pretty sure. So we're heading out to Mexico. Oh, wow. It's a very explosive, whatever that little party balloon is. So we're heading over to Mexico at the end of March, and we're going to have a couple of days. We're going to talk about personalization and then agency-related stuff. But anyway, that's it. I guess that's the sales pitch. I've been told that I should probably be more. People always ask me, how do you actually work with agencies? And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. So I'm done now. I've finished talking. I think that's the final slide. So any questions, comments? I'm going to stop sharing. Any feedback or advice that people can share on what they've done to recession proof, or what they are doing? Don't all talk at once, guys. Don't be shy.
Thanks a million, Rachel. Thanks very much, as usual. Very interesting. I have two questions. I put them into the channel there, but I'll call them out. You just mentioned a rule of thumb around. I'm always interested in rule of thumbs, and a rule of thumb on retainer investment of 5 to 8% on growth. How do you define growth services as distinct from marketing, ad spend budgets, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing that you really need to dig into, because because it's easy and I'm not that smart, 100K they're doing a month, or $1 million. If they're doing, let's say 100K, that means that 5,000 to 8,000 would be spent on growth. It's your responsibility to try and understand from them, where are you spending your growth budgets? Do you have a PPC person? Are you paying for someone? Now, I wouldn't say that 5 to 8% would be ads, because your ads are different. That's not ad budget. That's a different thing. It's in the actual services, so you're paying people to grow or maintain your store.
Cool. That answers that one. The other question was, you mentioned the profit margin for agency that's growing quickly. You suggested 10 to 15% is what you'd be comfortable with. What is growing quickly?
More than 50%. So if you're planning to grow more than 50% year on year, then that would be something that I would consider rapid growth, because it means that you're going to add, if you're at 20 people now, then you're going to be at 30 people by the end of the year. That's a pretty quick growth, because it's like almost one person a month on average.
Cool. Just to answer your own question in terms of what we're doing, it's largely around the inside sales. So we've spent all of January traveling the country, meeting our clients, and we took on two new team members. One is in brand marketing, specifically to try and grow the brand. Well, nail down the brand here and try and grow it overseas a little bit. And the other person is focused really on the inside sales consultation end of things, so that we are backing up our account management with some kind of more strategy and I suppose strategy focused actions that our customers or our clients can take. So that's what we're doing.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's the smart thing to do right now. I mean, when the market is unpredictable, or there's uncertainty, or people don't want to make decisions, just go to the people you know. You're going to have much more results from people who already know and trust and love your team and know that they're in safe hands. You know, they say it's like 3 times cheaper to retain a client than it is to acquire. I don't know if those numbers are, it's like 4 times or 12 times, but it's fucking loads more expensive to acquire a new customer than it is to retain a current one. So that's really is the smart strategy. It means that there needs to be a lot more foreplay, and you need to nurture, and you need to spend time and invest. And also, it's not just one person. I think I saw a comment earlier about who's responsible for doing those sales. I can't remember where I saw that. Should sales be an internal and owner driven, or do you have a good experience with outsourcing? Slightly different question. But it's not just it's not just your responsibility. I know you know that because you're a seasoned professional Viking when it comes to all this agency stuff. But it's not just one person's responsibility. It's not just the salesperson. It's the entire team. Like, everybody needs to be responsible and held accountable. Everybody needs to sell.
100%. There is one other thing we're doing actually, which is working out pretty well as well, is we gave the 4-day work week, work 4 days, get paid for 5, kind of as an experimental run during summer last year. And obviously everybody was delighted with the idea. And the key thing that we wanted in exchange for that was that the time tracked would hit the KPIs that we're looking for. So obviously we're a service in a service industry, so time tracking is the key thing. So we've doubled. So it worked well, but then time tracking started to taper off again once the kind of incentive of the 4 days was taken away at the end of the summer. So we announced it again at the start of this year. We talked to everybody about profitability. We talked to everybody about time tracking. We had our team leads were brought in. We had a presentation to the team leads of the goals for the year and how time tracking would affect, profitability and so on. And we have absolutely nailed in our approach to time tracking, and it's just in that accountability. Every team now, during their team meetings every week, has the KPIs and the time tracked and time build basically.
Nice.
And the time tracking now, like, I'm very happy to report we're actually hitting the KPI. We're above it, kind of for about 2 or 3 weeks in a row, which is, the first time since we did the 4-day work week. So that works pretty well.
Nice. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like I said earlier, it's about setting the expectations and holding the team accountable. You can't have one way out the other, trying to hold people accountable when they don't know where they're going, or telling people what you want from them and then not then holding them accountable to deliver. I think if you can get those two together, the fact we had a trial period over the summer was a good good way to test out the model. Matt, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say something about what Gerard had mentioned. I hope I said your name right.
Just trust me, he's been called worse. I know that for a fact. He's from Cork.
I had a client who's starting a new e-commerce part of their business. They're a wholesale distributor of parts, and they want to go direct to consumers. So they have the B2B side. They want to push their product lines, which are a little bit hard to get, and they're geared towards contractors, into direct to consumer. And they want to build it. They want to sprint to 1.5 million right away this year. And they're like, so how much do we have to invest? And I noticed you're 3 to 5% and you're 5 to 8%. And then I wanted to give them an answer. I said, spitballing, I said, Amazon kind of sets the market. And that if you're going to push all your products on Amazon, you're going to expect for them to take about 18% if you're going to do FBA. So I would think in terms of that, plus you're starting completely from scratch. So you want to build that repeat customer base. So you might have to go even above that for year one if you want to build traction for year two. But I honestly was like, I don't know. And then how much of that percentage should be outsourced and ad spend versus you have to put resources in-house? And does anyone have like a top of mind, like percentage? Or of course I know it's going to differ vertical to vertical, but I'm just wondering if anyone has talked about this conceptually before.
Hey, Matt, from an Amazon perspective, since that's all that I deal with, I can tell you it's super category dependent. So I think you're right there. If you're in like beauty or supplements or something like that, you could easily spend, if you're wanting to rank higher in search, which is the whole goal, because no one goes past the first page. I mean, very few people do. I mean, if you're in beauty, you could spend 20 to 40, maybe even 50% in that first year to build the traction that you need. And eventually over time, if you've got a good product, some people have shit products, and so it doesn't go anywhere. But if you've got a good product, over time, you can pull that. You can actually just increase your ROAS or your ROI and what you're putting in. And then it's not as, maybe you're still spending the same, but you're getting more out of it. And then your organic sales lift should be huge as well. But you could be in like garden hoses, and you maybe don't have to spend as much, or some really unsexy category. So I feel like that has a lot to do with it. And honestly, most the prospects that I talk to, most people that are in supplements or in beauty or one of those like really sexy spaces, they're wanting to really go big, but they don't have the budget to do it.
Thanks.
Rachel, thanks for the presentation. I just wanted to say that like a lot of the things that you talked about resonated with me. I've just been doing some digging into my business and getting better about tracking stuff, looking at like I'm doing projections and looking at like how much revenue is coming from one client, actually tracking my lead efforts and in sales efforts, and like looking at what is my close rate, what are the things that I'm doing, getting help if I'm not doing something correct. And I think just even knowing like what is my average deal, like most of like all my business is ongoing management of something. Since we're not doing any development, it's all on Amazon. It's additional creative or advertising, but ongoing management. And even just knowing what the target deal size is that I need to hit. And it's so simple, but like knowing that is super, super helpful. So just resonate a lot, and I appreciate it.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, numbers don't lie. I mean, staying on top of your numbers. I'm not, contrary to popular belief, I know I'm an operations person, and the people in this group that actually work with me on a regular basis, they'll assume that I'm like super comfortable with numbers. I'm actually not. I'm not. Got my best friend John, that, I mean, he's on his last legs now because he only works when he's been under the sun for about a day or two. But I'm not really comfortable with numbers naturally, but I've trained myself to be comfortable with numbers. It is an absolutely fundamental part to business. I think it's like death by numbers is definitely something that you want to avoid. I speak to some agencies and they've got spreadsheets coming out of their arse and they're tracking all sorts of shit. And it's just like, well, I can't really, what am I supposed to do with that all information? Like, let's just look at like which services are what's my, profitability per service, profitability per department, profitability per head. Let's look at how much money I need to have in the business. What do those overheads look like? How that's going through the funnel, where it's leaking through the funnel. That's the sort of stuff that I want to know so I can actually fix shit. All of these other vanity metrics is just not really that important. Sean, you had a question.
I did. I was just curious. One of the things that I've played with for the last year and a half is financing, specifically with a big project. 50, 25, 25, or however you want to break it down certainly works for some people. But I feel like from a buyer's perspective, there's an advantage there if we can say, oh, you can finance it or whatever. Now, the way that we do it internally is typically we just don't offer financing. And then if I feel like that's really a pain point, then rather than doing a true financing, I'll break it down to monthly payments, which was something that you mentioned also. But I was just curious if anybody here or any of your other agencies that you work with do financing, like through a partnership with a bank or in-house terms or however.
Just a couple of points on that, Sean. I was actually writing you a message when you started talking. We don't offer financing. However, there are two businesses in Ireland, and probably the UK as well. I can't remember the names, but they will offer financing for companies to purchase AdWords and things like that. Is it Vico or something, Rachel?
Yeah, there's lots of different ones, but yeah, that's one example.
So it's a different approach. One of them is one called Wayflyer, and you kind of give away all of your data, and they then provide you with like marketing dashboards, a little bit of support, some money, and the general gist of it, if I'm not mistaken, and this could be controversial, I don't know, but I think it's like they're potentially an M&A kind of result they're looking for. But I have come across agencies, kind of more directly to your point, where they've set up maybe a little bit of a SaaS type product, and they've agreed to roll out like an accelerated version of maybe of one of the services that they have, and they charge either nothing or a very minimal amount for the actual project, and then charge per month, kind of on a SaaS basis, for the actual offering. And they lock the client into, let's say, 18 months worth of the monthly repayments or payments, full stop. And if you kind of cancel it after, let's say, after the project is complete, then you owe them 18 months. So you have to pay 18 months, which or whether you can pay it over once a month over 18 months, but you continue paying after that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they make their money back. They make their money back on the overall thing over a period of time. They make a profit. They have continued SaaS approach as well. But I'm always kind of concerned about that whole thing about, well, if somebody leaves after 3 months, you're really prepared to go to court and try and get the money out of them. I prefer to get paid up front where possible.
Well, I have a few agencies that do it a few different ways. Some of my agencies do like their own in-house financing, where they say it's going to cost you, I don't know, it's going to cost you X amount for this project. Let's say 50K for this project, but the payment terms are 50, 30, 20. If you want it split 20 over 5 months, it's going to cost you 60K and you're going to pay a bit more. I have other agencies that work with like a Clearco or Wayflyer or something like that, where they speak to the financing. I think Clearco, is that dead now, or it's on its deathbed or something? I think they're going.
Yeah, it's on its deathbed.
Yeah, I've heard the saying that's like they just got a bit too trigger happy and spunking money up the walls and a load of shit, and then just weren't making smart decisions. So having a company like that, there's lots of companies out there, some better than others. But having a company like that where you can send the brand to, and the brand then can secure the money with them, and they pay you. Option which some of my agencies did very successfully. It's difficult to get this model working, and it really depends on your location. I had an agency in Sweden that had a relationship with a financial firm, company, whatever, and basically the arrangement was the brand came, the agency basically sold the brands like a 5K a month for 60 months, like a loan. But the project is front loaded and they get it in 3 months. They basically sell it to the financial company who pays the agency up front for all of that money. So let's just, I don't know what it was, let's say 100K or 50K build. So this is an agency that is 15, 20 years old. They already have that long-standing relationship. They have a great line of credit. And basically what they were doing is they were making referrals to this bank, financial institution, whatever it was, and they were getting the money direct, because when it goes via the client, that's when things can get a bit sticky. But it was coming straight from the lender to the agency, 100% upfront, and they closed over €1 million worth of business. Fucking hell, calm down, Sarkis. They closed over €1 million worth of business that summer just using that strategy.
That was my son in the background. He's very excited.
Jesus. He's clearly very excited about financing.
Yeah, takes after his dad. I just wanted to add, we do something very similar, but what we do is we tie clients into a retainer. So we have our base retainer depending on the technology that they're on. And if they want to spread the cost of a project over time, we only offer that to them if they want to take on the retainer. This is for new clients, obviously. So we have a retainer, and then we put it up whatever the project cost is over a 6, 9, 12, or 18-month period. and it's working really well for us because they jump at the chance of doing that. And when the project is done, they're on a retainer, and you're having that touch points with them every 3 months to continuously top up that retainer with more roadmap work that you're obviously planning in with them. So we've tried partnering with the finance companies, 2 or 3 of them actually, and none of them have really worked because even though we refer clients to them, their rules around financing have drastically changed over the last 18 months because of the economic climate.
Yeah.
And even some of our clients that are doing 3-4 million a year and have an extremely healthy cash flow and bank account have been refused finance. So the rules around it seem to be getting more difficult. So we just stopped doing it, and we just offer it in-house as part of our retainer, and it seems to be working quite well.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, the bottom line is if somebody's coming to you and they don't have the cash, it's like, just don't live beyond your means. If somebody comes to me and they're like a mad sign, they're like, oh, this is fucking amazing. I had somebody reach out to me on LinkedIn the other week. Honestly, it was hilarious. I sent it around to almost all of my LinkedIn or my WhatsApp contacts, even the people I haven't spoken to in years, because it was so funny. Somebody reached out to me and said, I want to be a business partner with you. I see you're very good at business. In 2021, my business made 4,500 euros in the year. I mean, talk about reach for the stars. But last year I didn't put focus in it and only made 500 euros. Would you be willing to partner up with me and I'll give you 10% of the business? And all we need is about 20 or 30K equity to invest in this business and we can really grow it. Now, I don't know if he was on acid when he sent that to me or what happened.
Yes.
I actually sent it to my husband. I was at the gym when I got it, and I sent it to my husband, and he replied and he said, oh my God, let's shut the companies down. This is the new best thing for us. Let's go all in on this. All our dreams can come true and we can retire by 40. I'm pretty sure he was joking, or maybe he was just like half asleep and half awake. I want to answer Alex's question. Actually, is Alex still on the call? Have we still got you, Alex? I'm not even going to take an attempt at your surname because I'm going to sound completely like an idiot. But you put a message in the chat where you said, I know we probably won't have time, okay, whatever, but it would be great to know how you deal with Gen Z developers asking for ridiculous salaries, 250, 300K that are pulled out of their arse or Glassdoor. Does anybody have any strategies? Yeah, they're delusional. I mean, that's just not going to happen. The bottom line is, unfortunately, because there was just like a massive gold rush in the industry, tech companies and brands were actually pricing agencies out of top talent. But obviously now we look at the market and you can see that most of those people have been let go of those high prices. Is the market going to come down and be realigned? I hopefully it will, but it's very difficult if somebody was on a 200K salary and then you bring them back down to reality where it should have been a few years ago and say, actually, you're worth about 100K. Are they willing to take that? In most cases, actually, they are, because they know that they were getting away with absolute murder. If someone comes to you and asking that amount of money, if you're saving lives, then sure, fine. But at the end of the day, you're just fucking building a website. You're not that good. And again, it depends on your business. I do have some agencies that have key people in their team that are 150, 200K. I do have people that are at that level, but it is an absolute circus freak juggling act every single month when we go through the profitability and the numbers, and we have to make sure that those margins are so tight. Just to break even on those people is very complicated. That means that you have to push the rest of the team to balance that out. So in some cases that works and is a good thing for the business. Number one, if you have like a CTO, for example, and they're leading a dev team, then it's probably worth the investment, but they still need to be part billable to cover their costs. And another thing, if you have an agency that you're planning to sell, which in the case for a couple of the agencies I work with, that's why it's worth taking that hit with someone, because if I want to sell that business that pulls me out of it, I'm willing to invest a bigger salary that's going to bump up the valuation that I have somebody at that level in the company. But if somebody's just coming in and they've got like, they're doing code on an abacus and they don't have a fucking clue what they're doing, and they've looked on Glassdoor and they say that that's what they're worth. At the end of the day, something or someone is only worth what somebody else is willing to pay for it, which is why my husband bought me for 2 camels. So that's all I was worth to him, and I think he's got great ROI. He might not agree. So I would just tell them to go fuck themselves. That's the short answer. You want 250K, 250, 300K. What are you going to make me 2.5, 3 million? Of course you're not, because you've only got so many billable hours.
You could you could offer them that rate as a freelancer, and they're required to be 100% billable. Then they'll find out what they're really worth.
They obviously don't understand business.
Amazon industry too. I mean, it sounds like it happens everywhere, but there were people who at the big aggregators that were buying all these like Amazon specific businesses that were offering 120, 150. Like for the Amazon space, that's more of like a director level, not just an account manager. And so people were asking for that. And a ton of those people have been laid off or replaced with overseas talent.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's like, as a rule of thumb, no, I don't think, and this is going to make me sound like an arsehole, I don't really think anybody in your team is worth that amount of money. I think there's exceptions, but if somebody is looking for that amount of money, my recommendation would be go and start your own business. Because until you realize the fundamentals of business, if I know, let's just say this person, if I know I've got 120 billable hours, roughly 75% a month, what's that? Let's say 275 is the average number divided by 12. So that means I need to make basically 23K from them a month divided by, what did I say, 120? So that means they need to be billing at least 75% at 200 an hour every month just to break even on their costs. And that's 250, 300K when you factor in healthcare, like all of the other shit that comes with it. You're probably going to add another 15, 20% on top. So you're going to be pricing them out. So it doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Yeah, I appreciate it.
I just wouldn't hire them. They're mental. That's like,
I'm just seeing so much of that these days. I don't understand it. I totally get. I mean, I have some guys who've been working for me for 8 years, and that's different because they brought a lot of value over the years, and thanks to them, everything's running, held together. But new guys, I just don't understand how they can ask for something like that.
No, I agree with you. And the difficult thing is, just like you said, which is the same for lots of other business owners, you have people that have been loyal to you for years and have worked their way up, and they've worked through with your business and going through all the trials and tribulations. So how do you justify bringing somebody, a new kid off the block who doesn't have nearly the experience, at 2 or 3 times their salary? Like, how can you ethically and morally justify that? In your heart of hearts, if you're going to push rates up for one person who's not experienced, you have to then do the same for the other. You don't have a business then. Or what do? Just hire somebody really expensive and don't tell everyone else? People talk. Like, shit gets around, somebody gets access to the wrong document, you look like the asshole, and the people that are the core people in your business have been by your side for years, you then lose their trust. So let Facebook, Google, let them hire them. That's tech company money. Agencies, we're a services business. We're selling hours effectively. We can't compete. I've done lots of interviews with people that are on paper very seasoned, and I say to them, look, if you're speaking to tech companies, agencies will not be able to compete with whatever they're giving you. But at the same time, you'll be the first to go, last in, first out. That's the way you're treated at a tech company. And I think over the last couple of months, the tech company has proved that in abundance, because the market is absolutely flooded with excellent talent. I've seen some amazing top of their game people that I know were being paid a lot of money be let go, and they were key people in their company, but they were so expensive they had to get rid of them. So no, it's just not going to happen.
Thanks, Rachel. I appreciate it.
I think that answered most of the questions. I can't really read very well, so I saw some of them come through. But if there's any other specific questions, just give me a shout, drop me an email, or put it on, message me on LinkedIn or whatever. If you like this style of roundtable, maybe I'll try in the future to have more of this stuff. It just means I just have to be organized and do presentations, and maybe I don't have time to do it, or I don't want to. But any questions, just let me know. Anything I can do to help, just give me a shout, and I will share the slides or whatever after. Is that cool? Good. Wow, that's fantastic. All right, I'm going to love you and leave you. And if you need anything, just drop me a line.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Take it easy.
Take it easy.
Thank
Ciao.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Rachel.
See ya.